Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you'd like to see more videos, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button or that bell button to receive updates whenever I upload a brand new video. Now the tutorial that I'm sharing with you guys today is how to make a really nice fluffy ruffled closed peony. Now as you know, there are many varieties of flowers and there are many varieties for the peony as well, and this is one of them. It makes a really nice fluffy, really large peony, and I'm sure you guys are going to like it, so let's quickly get started. So guys, let's get cracking on with this peony. Now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use our cocktail stick and we are just going to poke a hole in the middle of the foam ball all the way through. Pull it back out again, take all these little bits away, and we're just going to put our floral wire in there. So it's in the middle of the wire. Bring it down or bring it up, bring it across, and then just twist that in place. And that's our foam bud ready. Always remember, if it's a little bit loose, then tighten it up with some pliers. So it's really tight and secure. And that's just going to go there. And now our icing. Now I've done really light colours in the past, so I've decided to go with a nice dark red for the peony. And I'm just going to take some away. And I've just used some ruby red sugar flare colour to get this shade. And be careful because ruby red is quite dark, so you don't want to go and add too much colour, and it does tend to darken as it sits as well. And when you use darker shades of colours, you also need to remember that the paste does tend to get really tacky and sticky. Therefore you will need some cornflour for darker shades such as deep red, burgundy, red in general, dark blue, and any colours that you want dark. Black, of course, as well. So you just got to be very careful that you don't work with a sticky paste. And you don't want to blend in the cornflour as well to your paste, because that will just make it lighter in colour. So if you want the shade that you're working with, then don't mix any cornflour into the paste. You can by all means just apply a layer on top, just like that, but we don't want to mix it in because that will just make the paste lighter. So just roll it out until it's able to fit in your pasta machine. And I'm just going to add a little bit more to the paste. And all we're going to do is pop it through the thickest to the thinnest. And we're going to start off by cutting 15 petals of the smaller size. And I'm not going to put these in my storage board as it's already extremely tacky, and I do want it to sort of air dry before I start applying it to my bud. So I'm going to leave it there. Now if you have enough paste rolled out like I have here, you can pop that one to the side and cut out the remaining petals for all sizes, doing 15 of each. So once you've cut out all your petals, you should have 60 altogether and 15 of each size. And what we're going to do is we're going to get our smallest two first, and we are just going to make the petal slightly bigger using our rolling pin or our ball tool, whichever you prefer out of the two. And we're just going to make the petals slightly more wider, just going around in circles. And that's it. And then we're going to put these in our veiner. Now I may need to put some cornflour in my veiners as well, just so it prevents it from sticking to the veiner. Now you can add that to the petals as well, or you can add that to the veiner, completely up to you. And then press firmly into the veiner. Just like so. And I am going to leave these to air dry for a little while. It doesn't matter if it tears, because it's the inside of the petal and no one's going to see that. But before I do that, I'm just going to brush off the excess cornflour from both sides. And now I will leave it to air dry. And it's best to leave them air dry on a foam pad or something, rather than having it on a plastic piece, because, or a non-stick mat, because then the bottom side of it will not dry. It will still be wet as you pick it up, so it's best to do it on a foam. So once they've dried, I'm just going to pull that piece off, and we're going to get our ball tool, and we're just going to fill the top section of the petal, including the sides. Another reason why I let them dry is because they slightly tear when I apply them, making them look really more realistic and lifelike. But if you don't want them to tear when applying the petals, then just leave them air drying for 1 to 2 minutes, depending on the colour you're using. But I like mine to look as natural as possible, so I tend to leave them to air dry for a little while. And yes, they do tend to rip, and that's exactly why I do it, but that's not an issue. If you don't want to do that, then you certainly don't have to. And then we're just going to get our sugar glue and a brush, and we're just going to coat the petal with the sugar glue from the middle, all the way in the middle and at the bottom. And then we're going to get our ball and just apply the first layer, the first 2 petals, one on the right side. And you don't want them too flat, so just stick them in the center and just push them down from the middle, and then one on the opposite side. And that's going to go a little bit higher than the petal underneath, and it's going to overlap it as well. Just like so. And then our next row of petals is going to be of 6 petals, and I have just kept them in the storage board for now. So if we take out 2 petals at a time, getting rid of all the little extra bits of colour and making the petal a bit more bigger. And then into the veiner, again just add a dab of cornflour. And this makes a really large peony. And because they've been air drying all that time, I'm not going to leave them to air dry now. I'm just going to get straight into with the filling. and again just the edges all the way around. And you really want to do a back and forth movement. Do not be afraid to use some pressure in the hand that you're using. You just want to firmly do a back and forth movement so you get that nice little frill. And if it tears, that's a bonus, because then you'll get really nice natural looking flowers, just like so. And we're then going to do the remaining 4, so just keep going. And then we're just going to place our first petal here where the second petal or the first petal ends, whichever, but it's going to go just slightly on the join above. Just make sure it's in the center where the other pointy bit of the previous petal is, and then just push that down and then overlap by half and do the same. Push that down the middle. Remember, if the edges are lifted up, then don't press them down. Overlap by half. Stick down the middle. Overlap by half. Stick down the middle. Pull back the first petal. Overlap by half. Press down the middle. And then tuck this last petal underneath. And then if you can pull it back a little further and just tuck it right underneath, and then bring that back. And then we're just going to squish it from the top just to make it more so it's in the middle. So you get that. But make sure the bottoms are all glued. So just go around pressing the base. And now for the second layer of petals, for which we need 7 petals, and we're going to do the exact same thing, and it's the same size that we're using, and then glue exactly the same way. What I would recommend is, if your petals are too soft, when you apply your first petal, only glue the side that you're going to stick down, because once we get towards the end we have to pull it back anyway to stick our last petal, tuck it underneath the first one. So it would be better if you don't glue that side down and then glue it after you've overlapped the last one. So this is going to be my first petal, and I'm only going to glue the left side down of the petal, because when we pull back we pull from the right side of the petal, and that will just it won't stick to the previous row, and that'll just help when you tuck your last petal underneath. And again, we're just gluing the middle section away from the ruffles all the way to the bottom of the petal. But you really want to make sure you apply enough glue so it does stick. So as I mentioned earlier, this is going to be my first petal, and you'll see what I mean. And I'm just going to apply it on a join of a previous row, but slightly higher, just ever so slightly, so that side's not glued, and it'll just make it easier once I pull it back. And then I'm going to overlap that by a half and add my next petal at the same height. Overlap that with another petal. And then the same at the same height, really pressing that base in so it's glued. Overlapping that. And now I can pull that back without an issue. And then our next petal, just overlap that by a half. And then for our last one, if you pull it back even more, you can tuck that underneath. So that's just a little tip. And then just turn it upside down and make sure all the petals are really stuck. Don't forget to glue that bit down. Just like so. And I'm going to wait for this to completely dry before moving on to our next layer of petals. Now whilst we're waiting for that to dry, we'll go ahead and prepare our next layer of petals. And now we're going to be using the next size up, which is the medium one. And again, we're just going to widen the petal a little. And we're going to do 7 of these. Then fill as normal. Now you can either fill them how we've done the first 2 layers, or you can fill them this way by just bringing them in with your small bowl tool. And that'll just give them a nice cup coming to the middle, just like that. And then just fill the sides as normal with the back and forth movement. And then into the apple tray. Just throw them in there and just leave them as they are. Don't try to flatten the edges out and make them perfect. And then we're going to wait for these to dry. Not completely, but just enough so they have that cup shape and they're still flexible. Now that the petals have dried, we're going to go ahead and add our next row. And if you can see, they've got that really nice cup shape to them, but they're still flexible. So we're just going to go ahead and add our row of 7 petals. And we're going to do the exact same thing with the glue, where we're just going to coat the middle section completely, keeping it away from the edges of the petal where we've ruffled. And you want to coat the bottom bit of the petal as well. We're going to go ahead and apply our petal on a join of the previous row and slightly higher, just the same as we did before, and then just glue that down, pressing it firmly so it's completely stuck to the bud. And then overlap that and do exactly the same. As you go the next size up in petals, you do tend to overlap a lot more of the previous petal because they're slightly larger petals. So just keep going with the overlapping. Pull that back. Turn it upside down and make sure the bottoms are completely stuck. And at this stage you can open the petals if you wish ever so slightly, or you can just leave them a little bit more tight. And then I will wait for this to set as well, not for it to dry completely, but just for it to hold its shape before adding our next row of the same size petals. And at this stage you can hang this upside down if your petals are slightly more flexible and are falling off, or you can just hang it upright if it's able to hold itself. And whilst this dries, we'll work on our next layer of petals. So go ahead guys, work on your next row of petals of the same size petal cutter. Make them a little bit bigger, vein them, frill them any way you want, either doing the curved in method or doing them the other frill method where we just go with the back and forth movement, or do both to give the petals more movement and then give the flower more variation. Throw them in your apple tray and let them get that nice cup shape that we're after. And now we've got our flower, which is a little dried. It's not completely dry. As you can see, there's still some movement to the petals, but it's dry enough for us to apply our row. For which all we're going to do is take our petals out of the apple tray. Now, because I did two varieties, I did some that are curling in and some that are just normally frilled. I'm going to do one of each. So I can mix the petals up a little bit. So these ones are curved, these ones are just frilled, curved again, just frilled, curved, frilled, curved and frilled. So now I've got 4 of each, 4 curving in and 4 just normal frilled. And we're going to do exactly the same with the sugar glue, just coating the whole petal away from the curled and frilled edges. But you do want to cover the whole petal and the bottom especially. And be sure to apply enough glue so the petal doesn't fall off. And you can also wait for them to get tacky just for a couple of seconds and then just apply them as normal. Our first petal again on a join, slightly higher. And be sure to push the sides in so it's completely glued. And try not to touch the middle section because we do want that curve, that bend in. And that petal, that side of the petal is not glued, so just push it in, making sure the left side of it is glued. And if you tend to get the broken bits of petals in your hand with the glue, just wipe them down. And then our next petal, overlapping, making sure the sides are really stuck. And again, any petals that are tearing, no problem at all. No one's going to see this at this stage. And overlap by a half. Try and use the same amount of overlapping because you need to fit all 8 petals in. Our last one, tucking it underneath the first one. And then glue that bit down as well. If it's easier, just hold the petals from the back, glue that in place. Turn it upside down and make sure the base of the petals are completely glued, and any sections you've missed, just add a tiny bit more glue and just stick it down. Now you want to wait for this to completely dry before moving on to our next layers, and that's what you should get once you've added this row here. And again, if it's not fully holding itself upright, then hang it upside down for around half an hour and then turn it upright. But if they seem fine, like mine are, then you can just hang it upright. But you want to wait for this to completely dry before moving on to the next row. So now that the flour is completely dried, we're going to go ahead and add our remaining rows. And you do want to let the flour dry between each row. And you need 7 of these. And this is the last row that's going to go slightly higher than the previous row, and then we will start to put them below the previous row. So once they are a little bit dried, we are going to start making the petals slightly bigger, just as normal. And we're going to use the exact same technique that we've been using for all the other rows. So first do 7 of these and then we'll come back once they're all done. Okay, so now that the petals have dried slightly, just stick them on as normal. And then we're just going to lift our flower up and place our first petal. We'll go for this one, just slightly higher than the previous row. And as I mentioned, if you have trouble with removing the first petal to tuck the last one in, then just only glue the side down that you're going to stick, and then just leave one side without glue. And then overlap that by around half. Make sure you press the bottom and the sides. Try your best not to press the middle of the petal. And then just keep going. And then we're going to leave this to dry completely before moving on to our next row. So again, if it can hold itself up, then you can hang it upright, or if not, then just hang it upside down for a short while and then hang it upright, because you don't want the petals to be too clustered to the center. You want them slightly open, and this is a really nice variation of the petals. So once it's had a bit of time upside down and it's able to hold itself upright, you can open the petals a little bit. Should you want to, or you can just leave them quite tight. That's completely up to you, however you want your closed peony to look. So I'm just going to pop this here in my pasta machine just for it to hold, and we're just going to go ahead and add our next layer of petals. Again, you just want to widen the petal. You just need 8 petals for this one, and then again, using your ball tool, just frill and curl the edges. And then we're just going to leave to dry until they've got that cup shape, but yet they're still flexible. Now that the petals have had sufficient time to dry, you can see that they're still flexible, but they've still got that cup shape. And we're just going to take all 8 of them. And for these petals and the remaining layers, we are going to just glue the bottom left and right sides of the petal. And this time you can get your edges in as well where you frilled. And if they're too dry, the edges, the glue will just soften them up, making it easier for you to glue them on. So just pick up your flower. And just start placing it slightly below the previous row. And if you're comfortable, you can also hang this upside down and put them on that way. But if you can hold it upright, then you can by all means put it on that way too. And then we're just going to overlap that. And you don't want to overlap too much with these rows. And you can either put one petal straight and put another one at an angle, just to give the petals a bit more variation, or you can have them all straight. That's up to you as well, how you decide to add your petals. But just make sure they are glued. And then I'm just gonna support the flower with my hands like that and just show you what it looks like from the top view. And then I'm just going to hang this upside down for a short while until it's able to hold its shape. But you want to leave this to completely dry before moving on to the next layer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hang it upside down until they're able to hold their shape, and then I'm going to pop it on my dehumidifier for the remaining time and just allow it to dry completely. And whilst that dries, we are going to go ahead and work on our next layer, which is our final largest cutter, and we need 7 petals for these. And again, I'm just going to widen it up ever so slightly and vein it. And then we're just going to do that back and forth motion with the ball tool, and then into the apple tray again, pressing down the middle to get that nice little cup shape. So go ahead and continue doing the same thing for the remaining 6 petals, and then leave them to dry exactly how we've done with the previous layers until they've got that nice curve but they're still flexible to apply. And if you were to put it on a cup, all you would do is get a cup and some kitchen roll, poke a hole in it in the middle of the paper, in the middle of the kitchen paper, so your wire can go through in there easily, and just lift it up, straighten the wire, put it through and into the cup, and that'll just give it some support. But you want to be really careful, because when a peony dries, it's extremely fragile, extremely fragile, because the edges are frilled so much that they become extremely brittle, and we don't want the petals or any of those edges to tear or come off. So just be very gentle when making this flower, and then just leave that to dry. Now that the flower has dried, first petal is just going to go slightly below the previous row, and we're just going to stick that there, and you want to make sure it's completely stuck. So if it is easier, just hold it upside down, and remember only one side of it is glued, so just glue the side down that has glue on it. And then you just want to overlap that ever so slightly and just glue that down as well. And you really want to make sure these bits are glued. And again, you can either place this at an angle or you can place it straight. So one at an angle and one straight, and then repeat. So at this stage, before adding our last and final layer, it should just sit on top of the cup rather than being pushed in, because we don't want the petals to be too closed. So any petals that are, just slightly open them up, because now we want the flower to be opening up at this stage. So just have them a little open and then just leave them to fully dry. So just to speed up the process, I've just put this in my oven for around 10 to 15 minutes on the lowest temperature, just for it to firm up a little bit more. And it's now a little bit more dry, but because it's a deep colour, it takes slightly longer even in the oven, so you can leave it for longer than that as well. But we're now going to add our last and final row. So we're going to go ahead and prepare your last layer and fill them, vein them, put them in the apple tray and wait for them to dry until they get that nice cup shape and that nice curve, but they're still flexible, and then we'll come back and add them to the flower. So guys, now that our final row is ready, we can now take them out of the apple tray and start adding them to our flower. And I have done 8, but you may not need all of them, and you may just need all of them. It just depends on your spacing and how wide and how big your foam ball is. And again, you just want to glue in the left and the right side. But for the first petal, we're just going to glue the side that we're going to glue down first, so we can peel back and then add our final petal in. But for the rest, you just want to glue the left and the right hand side up to about a half. And then again, just pick up your flower and be comfortable with holding the flower however you want to apply them, whether you want to hold it upside down or you want to hold it upright, or you want to flip it to the side and use your left hand as a supporter. So whichever way you're comfortable with. And we are gonna put them slightly lower than the previous row, and by now your point of the petal should be towards the base of the bud, next to where the floral wire is. Again, but you want to put it on a join, so just secure that there, just the sides. And I've only glued one side down, so remember the other side is not glued and it won't support it if you flip it over. And again, you can do one straight, one at an angle, one straight, one at an angle. And we only need the 7 petals. We don't need the 8th one that we've done, so I'm not going to stick that on. And then one at an angle again. So just try and peel back your first petal and just pop that underneath. And if you can't get it in, then just put it on top. It doesn't really make a difference. And then glue this one down. And I'm just going to put it on my foam pad and just press the rest of the petals down from the back ever so gently, but be very careful because you don't want to break the other side tips of the petals. And I'm just going to flip it over and show you the end flower and what it looks like. I'm just going to pop it in my paper towel again. And just put it in my cup once again. And at this stage it should just be sitting on top of, so there's no need to push it in. So just put it on top and just let it sit there, just naturally without touching anything else. So just leave that to dry completely now. So guys, that brings us to the end of the video. It makes a really beautiful flower. I'm not going to waste too much time talking here because the video has already been so long. So go ahead, have fun, make it yourselves. Send me pictures if you do make it. Feel free to join my Facebook group and I'll leave the link for that in the description box below. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this peony tutorial. Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe to my channel as well. Please make sure you hit that bell icon as well, otherwise you won't receive notifications whenever I upload a new video. So if you want to receive those, then go hit that bell icon as well. And I'll be back next time with another new video very soon. Take care of yourselves and thank you for watching.